Andrei Bihun from the Washington Group. Alla, thank you. Thank you for your emails to remind me that this is on. And then I saw George's name, so obviously quite a duo. You put on quite an eye-opener, although we kind of knew it, but I was glad to see that the two of you are here and bringing this case. And I'm also very glad that it's going to be broadcast and spread out considerably more. I have, just to follow up on Nadia's question, I'll probe a little bit more. Has there been evidence, even, George, within your Orphans Aid Society, in terms of sponsorship that could be, or in fact has been, applied from Ukrainian citizens, let's say prior to this current global economic crisis? Was there any evidence that that sponsorship would be forthcoming from Ukraine, from Ukrainian entrepreneurs, middle to high entrepreneurs, maybe even the oligarchical class, etc., that would take part in the Orphans Aid Society as sponsors, long-term sponsors? That's one question. The other question, perhaps to both of you, is there any evidence among, let's say, the executive branch of the Ukrainian government, whether it'll be in the presidential administration or Cabinet Ministerium, as to the desire to move away strictly from the institutional orphan caregiving to what you might call the family approach, the family unit type of approach, a surrogate family approach, as we think we definitely all would like to see develop. And if so, is there a chance from your perspective whether that can in turn translate into the budget of Ukraine? I'm not even saying into the laws, because we know the laws are there already.
Let me take the first question. Finding Ukrainian sponsors. That went beyond our original charter. We were incorporated in New York State as a U.S. not-for-profit organization. We certainly have discussed it on the board. Having kind of a counterpart organization registered in Ukraine, looking for basically our business model mapped into Ukraine, looking for sponsors there. That will require an organizational presence there and organizers to get that going. We could certainly fund that to get it started. We've had enough difficulties maintaining our current business model because we do, as I noted, the statistic of declining sponsors here in the United States. We do want to keep this going for a while yet. So we stayed focused on that. I suspect there would be interest there. Judging by the involvement in some of the cultural aspects of Ukraine, of the oligarchic classes, I'm sure we could get that started there. But it's difficult to do it long distance, and it will require some additional presence there that frankly is too weak for us. It'll take some serious players in KU to get talking to these folks. It's something we can do downstream, but it's a valid point you make. It's a good one. If we can help them, Ukrainians, organize this kind of self-help activity there, it'll have a much better chance for success in the long term, and there'll be orphans in Ukraine forever. So, yeah, that's something we will be looking at some more. As I said, we've discussed it. We just haven't set about seriously organizing that, but it's a worthwhile effort. As far as the second point, judging by the amount of money that's available there in the private sector in Ukraine, floating around for extravagant behavior, channeling that, I think, into more worthwhile efforts be good. Whether that requires government intervention to do, raises specters of corruption and the notion of, are you really doing this for the right reason? If you want to set up a private sector solution over there, like we have from here, it's got to be done strictly through an end in itself without political leverage. So I'll let you take the rest of that if you'd like.
Thank you. I'd like to add on to the private sector in Ukraine. There is an organization established in Kyiv. It's called Приятелі дітей. They've been around for a while, and they do provide similar support as Orphans Aid Society, as well as focusing on education, providing stipends. So there is some grassroots movements out there, but again, I don't know, can't provide any statistic data, nothing in terms of whether it has been scaled up lately, but again, there is something. At least the NGOs are, more rising right now than they used to be, obviously, before the 90s when they were prohibited. In terms of deinstitutionalization, it used to be very high up on the government agenda to move from institutionalization to foster care. There's been a lot of international pressure to deinstitutionalize. There's been a lot of criticism, again, by NGOs about the destructive environment. And I know the government was planning to do that. There was some sort of plan designed, but it's going to take years. I don't think it's a top, high priority right now, given the economic crisis. And I don't see it, happening in the next 5 years, not until, we rebuild our political stability and there is some money back in the budget. But I know that it is the government's agenda to move from institutionalization to foster care. Foster care in Ukraine envisions either building family houses with like 25 children, let's say, living in the same house with adults who take care of them on a daily basis, or more Western perspective of foster care is when parents take in a child for an indefinite time, whether it's 3 months or a year or it's a long-term commitment. In terms of the social awareness, social consciousness of foster care, it's not burgeoning yet. People are really not ready, first of all, to adopt their own Ukrainian children, let alone so to say, a stranger live with them in the house. So, but I think there is some change. There is something happening, and hopefully we will get there at some point, maybe within next, 10, 20 years. Again, a lot will obviously depend on the, political will, as you pointed out, and the budget, I think.
Let me share an anecdote with you in terms of, there's our own experiences with Ukrainians and our families and distant relatives and our knowledge of, at the grassroots, what Ukrainians are like. And given the economic difficulties of the past and current, it's a burden to take on somebody else's child. If there's some financial assistance that would go along with that, which is what a foster system, foster care is all about, then that's likely to be facilitated. But much charity of that sort has always existed, certainly in my family history and my knowledge of Ukrainians. About 10 years ago, one of the orphans in our system, and there were others, but this is kind of a touching story, an anecdote. The guardian's not related to the orphan that we're supporting. She's an older woman on pension, so she had a very miserable existence anyway. And she was in a street when some homeless kids, street children, were rounded up by the authorities. And one of the kids, they're clearly headed for an institution. And one of the kids, a small boy, broke away from the group and clutched onto her apron, and pleading with her that she take him in because he didn't want to go to an orphanage. And so for some reason she agreed to do it, and she took him in, and she was raising him. And that's one of the kids that, she qualified for sponsorship, and we took them in.